Welcome to part 2 of the tutorial. In this part, I'll be showing you some more details on getting static meshes into Unreal Ed. As you can see, since the end of the last tutorial, I have added a temporary skybox just to make things look a little nicer. I'll probably end up using the original Call of Duty 4 skybox in the end, though. I've also expanded the area outside the playable area, so we've got lots of room to put in our background objects. And I added a player start so that it can be tested in-game. Alright, so let's get going with importing meshes into Unreal Ed. We are going to start with a simple grass mesh to show you the basics. So what you want to do is you want to select the mesh that you want to port over, invert your selection, and delete everything that's not part of that mesh. So select my grass mesh. You can see in this, if I pull it up here, there's the grass there that I want to save. So I'm just going to invert my selection, select invert, delete everything else. There's my grass. Now, one thing that when you use a 3D Ripper program is it can leave like stray vertices everywhere. So I'm going to make sure that there's no extra ones. Oh, and you can see, look at that. As soon as I went to vertex selection mode, there's a billion stray vertices here. So I want to make sure that I'm deleting all those stray vertices and just keeping the grass ones. So let's select our grass vertices here. Try and make sure that we've got everything that's meaningful data for our grass selected, but everything that's not will get deleted. So once I've selected all my grass vertices, oh, I think I missed one there. Once again, I go edit, select invert, delete. It still looks like there's lots of extras here that I don't need. So just try and delete them if I can see that they're extra, that we don't need them, just to simplify the mesh data. You don't want to be importing a bunch of hidden geometry into Unreal Ed. That there's looking pretty good. Alright, so here's my grass. I'm going to just move it so that it's kind of centered on the origin. And I'm also going to just move the pivot so the pivot is in the center. So I go here, Effect Pivot Only, and choose Center to Object. There, so we got a mesh nicely centered. It's going to look good in Unreal Ed, but there's one more step that we really need to do. Oh, I need to rotate it just a little bit. It's a little bit off balance there. Just try and get it as square up as I can, just so it imports nicely and is easy to position in the Raven Shield editor. Alright, so there's my grass mesh. That's looking pretty good. But before I import this mesh into Unreal Ed, I need to do the texture. So what you need to do is select your mesh, go to Rendering, Material Explorer, and you can see here that there is a material, the grass material is called 6B26B C9C. So I'm just going to copy that. And now I need to go to my capture folder and search for that texture. There it is right there. I'm going to open it in Photoshop. You can use whatever your image editor is. Here's my my grass texture here. And you can see it has an alpha texture here, or an alpha channel. So I'm going to export this as a 32-bit TGA. So save as. Save it as a 32-bit TGA. Make sure it's selected 32-bit. If you do 24-bit, it won't import into Unreal Ed and you'll lose your alpha channel. Hit OK. Alright, we're done with Photoshop for now. You'll want to go back to 3ds Max and export your mesh now as a ASE format. Call it grass.sm. Make sure that your settings for your export are all good. Press OK. And now we go to Unreal Ed. So here's Unreal Ed. Open your texture browser. You'll want to import the texture first. And if I remember correctly, it was 6B26B, that one. Compression here is an important setting. If you have an alpha channel, like we do with this grass texture, you'll want to choose DTX3 or DXT3 or 5, because that will compress it without losing the alpha channel detail. If it doesn't have an alpha channel, use DXT1 because that's the most effective compression. So I'm going to do 3, hit OK, and there you can see my texture appeared. But before I import the mesh, you'll notice that there's a green background, and I really want it to be a transparent background. So I'm going to go File, New. I'm going to make sure I'm making a new shader. Call it Shader Grass. And then I select this grass texture. I set it to be the diffuse and the opacity. And so what that does is it gives me an opaque, sorry, not opaque, it gives me like a see-through all areas except for the grass blades themselves. And then select your new shader down here. Static meshes. Let's import the new grass mesh. Import. There's grass. I don't want collision for the grass. That's a waste of time. Hit OK. And here's our grass, and you can see that it's a bunch of ugly triangles, and we need to apply that transparency. So down here, under Materials, you can see it's using the texture. We want it to use our shader. So in Textures, as long as you've selected your shader here, in Static Meshes, just hit Use. And now it uses it, and you can see that's some nice thick-looking grass. So let's try adding the grass in. I got to change my display size because it is a little bit too small. There's my display size, and you can see it looks pretty nice. There's the grass. Just want to change a couple settings on that grass real quick. I don't want the grass to do anything to do with collision, so I don't want to block actors, block players. I don't want to collide actors. Bullet go through true, pawn go through true, see through true, and then under display, I do not want it to cast a shadow. And then I hit Build All, and there's some beautiful grass. I can use Control W to duplicate it, place it around in various areas. There's our grass. Alright, now I'm going to try something a little bit more complicated. I want to get this warehouse building here into Unreal as a single static mesh, but I've got a few problems to fix first in 3ds Max. First of all, it's made up of multiple parts, so I'm going to have to combine all those together, but also delete all this extra stuff that I don't want. Another problem is that it has a whole bunch of duplicate faces. You can see it's got all these green faces in there. I'm not sure why, but you definitely want to delete duplicate faces. It can cause issues with lighting and with texturing. And then another problem is that if you look in this viewport, you can see it's kind of skewed, and we'll have to fix that as well. So let's get started. We start again with the basics of just select what you want and delete the inverse. So we'll just get rid of what we can here that we don't need. And I'm also going to start deleting some of these green faces if I can. So I'm not sure if the green faces are a glitch with 3D Ripper or if it's like something from Call of Duty. Could have something to do with collision. I really don't know. All I know is that they cause problems when you try and get them into max, so I'm just going to delete them while I can here. Anytime I see a green face, I'll just try and delete it. Oh, there's a big one on that roof. Let's check. No, that's not it. There we go. Green faces on the back here. Wasn't it? There we go. Let's see, still got some green faces there to delete. If I had to make a guess, I'd bet that these are like collision hulls that Call of Duty 4 uses, but we don't want them in our game. So I think I've got all the duplicate faces deleted. So my next step is to combine everything into a single static mesh. So I just select one of them, I go to the attach list, and I join them all together. Now that they're one mesh, I'm just going to go vertices select what I want to keep, select invert and delete, and now we just have just our one mesh. I'm going to put the pivot into the center of the object, and I am going to move it to the origin. And there is our beautiful warehouse. Not too bad. Now I still have a little bit of fixing to do. Like I mentioned, it is skewed. So how to fix that is you can add a skew modifier. I'm going to add a skew modifier, and I'm going to just try fiddling around with the amount and the direction to fix my my issues with this mesh. So that's not what I want there. You sometimes have to play around with it a little bit to get it lined up perfectly. That there is pretty well lined up. I'm just going to collapse that. And it just needs a slight amount of rotation just to level it out. There we go. That's pretty good. There's a couple more steps that you can follow, especially for meshes that are from a 3D Ripper. They'll often be just a little bit not optimized properly. So one of the things that you may find is that all the vertices are not welded. So if you select all your vertices, and you can go down down here to weld selected at a really low number, that will weld any vertices together that are like right on top of each other. But then you'll see that that messes up all your normals here. So you'll need to add a modifier to fix that. I find the easiest to fix that is just a smooth modifier, and check auto smooth, and that fixes your lighting issues. But you can also do it with an edit normals. You can see all those normals are messed up. Just select all the normals and hit break, and that also fixes lighting issues. I think smooth is probably a better option. So I'm going to put a smooth modifier on it. I've got it lined up where I need, and I'm going to export it to ASE format. But don't forget also to go to rendering, material explorer, and make sure that you convert all these materials into 32-bit TGA, and then get it into Unreal at first before you do this model. I'm actually just going to skip over that time-consuming part. I'm just going to jump right to the spot where I've got my materials ready to go. Alright, so skipping ahead a bit, I've got my textures all converted and imported. One final thing to note about the textures before I import my static mesh is that any textures that a bullet can hit, you're going to want to set the hit effect on it, because otherwise it just appears like the bullet goes straight through without doing anything. So set this hit effect in the textures properties. So this here, it's metal, so I set the hit effect to be the sheet metal effect. Something like this, I'd set the hit effect to be glass. This one's concrete. This one down here could be the brick effect. But that just means that when a bullet hits it, it'll actually look like it's hitting it. Once you've done that, head over to Stack Meshes, and let's import our new mesh, small warehouse. I'm not going to check the no collision box because I do want bullets to hit this. So just hit OK. Here's our beautiful warehouse. Sometimes with static meshes, when you put them in the game now, you're going to realize that it definitely needs some resizing, some fixing up. So open my properties, go to display properties, set my draw scale a fair bit bigger, maybe 2.4 is better, and it needs to be a little bit wider as well, so I'll widen it up and put it into place. And then let's try building it and see what happens. Alright, so you can see that the shadows still aren't that great. Some static meshes, they just don't light very well in Unreal Ed because of the way vertex lighting works. But one way that you can help that, it's not ideal, it's not an ideal fix, but you can set static lighting to false, and that can improve the way the lighting works. So you see that already looks a fair bit better on that building. So I'm just going to duplicate this building and put it into place now. I'm still using my my really ugly dimension map or dimension mesh to place these things. Once I've got them placed, I hit build all, and that looks pretty nice. Alright, time to move on to my next mesh project. My next mesh to work on is the shipping container. I've already done some of the work ahead of time, like deleting everything that doesn't belong, getting rid of the duplicate faces, skewing it a bit. But what's interesting about this shipping container is that when I put it into Unreal I want the basic rectangle shape to be done in BSP to make it easier for collision and lighting, and just have these little extra ornaments around the edges and sides as static meshes. So the other thing that I need is I need two different meshes, because some of these shipping containers you can walk through. So I need a mesh that does not have these bars on the end, and then I want these bars on the end as a separate static mesh. So what I'm going to do to get this exporting into Unreal is I'm just going to delete the faces that are going to be used or that are going to be recreated in BSP. So let's delete these faces. And I'm just going to quickly delete those bars as well. Those bars will go in as a separate static mesh that I can place on crates that need it. So there we go. This is one of the meshes, and this mesh will just be placed around a BSP box. So I'll export that right now. And I'm going to call it container frame. And then now what I want to do is get back those bars and delete everything else besides these bars. So let's select everything here that's not the bars and delete that. So now for any container that needs it, I can just add these bars as like decoration on the sides. But containers that don't need it, I can just leave them right off. So let's move this to the origin again. And I'm also just going to set the pivot point to its center. I think we're ready to export this. So we'll file export, and I'm going to call it container bars and export it. Alright, and now we'll go to Unreal and work with this stuff. Okay, here we are in Unreal. Don't forget to import all your textures for the container as well, and go to properties and set the hit effect. I've set mine to sheet metal effect, and then go to static meshes and import your static mesh. So bars and frame, and when I import them, I am going to check no collision, because these meshes are very thin and they'll be right next to BSP. The BSP rectangles, they'll do the job of collision. So by checking no collision, I'm just slightly optimizing my map a little better. Then I hit OK all, and in they come, and there they are. So there's my frame. Let's add the frame in here, and I'm definitely going to need to resize that frame a bit because it is way too small. So 2.4 I'm finding is a good size, and I also need to make it a little bit wider, so I'm going to change that to 1.2. And I'm also finding that this is not tall enough, so I'm going to set the height to 1.3. That just makes it a bit taller. That looks pretty good right there. I think that'll be good values for my shipping container. I think I need to rotate it 180 degrees and get it into position. Maybe I shouldn't have rotated it. Hang on. No, I think that's good right there. So there's my container mesh. Now I need to build a BSP box for it. So I'm just going to hit build. Here's my red builder brush. I'm going to line that up as close as I can with this static mesh, so that when I hit add, this container will look pretty good. So you can see in the top-down view that red brush is lined up pretty good, but I can't also forget that my brush is way too big height-wise. So I'm going to pull up these bottom vertices here. I'll do the same over here on the other side. Okay. So if you look in the 3D view, it looks like it's lined up pretty good. I'm going to make sure that my main shipping container texture is selected, and then I'm going to hit add, not subtract. And there is my shipping container. If I just take a look around the edges, looks like it's lined up pretty good. There's no gaps where you can see clear sky through. Looks like a pretty... No, that's pretty good right there. Pretty good lineup. So now my next job, I just want to quickly change that top texture. And then I'm going to put those decorative bars on it. So select your bars, add the bars in here, and I got to change the size settings once again. I'm going to rotate them and put them into position. You know what, I think I got these bars backwards. Let's try that. No, I did not have them backwards. That was dumb. There we go. Hit build all. Shipping container looks pretty good. So turn on the lighting. You can see, not so bad. Oh, one more thing with this one, I forgot to set the end texture. So let's select that texture there. And yeah, that's not bad. Looks like a good container. Okay, so now in the original map, next to this shipping container, you can see there's another container here, but it is it's able to be walked through. So I am going to duplicate both the frame and I don't want to duplicate the bars, but I do want to duplicate that blue BSP brush. I'm going to use Control W to duplicate this, and then I need to build a walkway through it. So if I just quickly go build all, now I need to use my red brush to build a walkway through. So this part's going to be a little tricky, but what I want to do is I want to try and get it fairly close in size, but edit my vertices so that there's a narrow wall. And then once I've got that narrow wall built properly, I'm going to gonna use the intersect tool to get rid of the extra space, because if I don't get rid of the extra sort of extension on that, I'm gonna end up with some nasty BSP holes. Oops. So there, we got that lined up nicely. I want to adjust the height down here as well, though. So how high is good? I'll try there. This is a bit of trial and error here. I'm not exactly sure what values are going to be the best for this, but we'll try this. We'll try it. And now that I've got my red builder brush positioned, doesn't look so bad, I gotta make sure I intersect. So I go brush, intersect, and that just lines up the brush, the red brush, exactly with the solid BSP that I've already built. And now if I hit subtract, I should have a walkway through this. Fingers crossed. Looks like it worked. So I'm going to set my textures properly. I think that one's already good. Set this texture, where's that inside texture? There it is. And that one as well. And there you go, we have a walkable container. Now I'll just move it into place. So I'll get my red brush out of the way, and then I'll go back here and I'll make sure that I select the blue brush, this gold brush, which is our walkable area, and my shipping container mesh, and move it into position. And rotate it exactly as I need. And then try hitting build all and see what we get. There it is. Oh, the top of it's kind of ugly. I messed up on the top. So I'll have to do a little adjusting of this this golden brush here. So I'll just edit these vertices up top. This could turn out really bad. I wonder if intersect will work on this brush. Probably will. Okay, let's try hitting intersect. I hope that worked. Build all. Looks like we got a roof on that one now. That's a little better. Alright. I'll turn on my lighting, see how that goes. It's pretty dark. I need to do more lighting on this map, but we now have 2 shipping containers in place. Awesome.